So looking at mission statements now and aims and objectives as well, which is a bit of a recap of what you'd have done in the AS course. So we need to have general knowledge about what mission statements are, what's contained in them, and whether they're useful or not to businesses. And there's a specific way to answer these types of questions as well. So keep watching till the end for that. So mission statements sets out what the business is trying to achieve, the reason why it exists, and sometimes called a vision statement, but a vision statement is slightly different because it's looking towards the future and what they want to achieve in the future. Whereas mission statement is more, I suppose it is, future based, but who they are maybe. So looking at whose mission statement is this, and I've got a little, I'll just move that for you. It's Google's mission to organise the world's information and make it universally accessible. I have issues with words, and useful. Here we have innocent, and they, have this focus on ethics and environmentally friendly. We have Adidas here, and quite interesting one, I think, this one. So they talk about being environmentally responsible as well, but they also, fourth one down, talk about being committed to continuously strengthening brands and to improve the competitive position and delivering outstanding financial results right at the bottom there. I always ask my students, is there a reason why they've put them in this order? Because usually you put the most important one first. And being customer focused is very important. You're not going to sell anything if you don't please your customers, and you certainly won't get them to make repeat purchases. But is that, does it warrant being so far down there, the financial results, or is it just a way of trying to make their customers and stakeholders believe that finance and profit is important, but comes at the end of all these other things as well? I'm not too sure. So what do they usually contain? They usually contain the values of the business, some type of statement. Oh, spelling mistake there. I don't know why it's capital. Usually contain, so who they are and their values, usually their aim, and it's quite qualitative, usually quite a vague aim. Sometimes they contain the benefits of the community and how consumers are going to be satisfied. So here's Ben & Jerry's, so their product mission: to make, distribute and sell the finest quality all natural ice cream and euphoric concoctions, with continued commitment to incorporating wholesome natural ingredients and promoting business practices that respect the earth and the environment. Economic mission, so sustainable, financial, profitable growth, things that we'd expect they'd need to do to please shareholders. And then social mission as well, and you had some kind of environmental mission in the product mission there as well. Central to mission of Ben & Jerry's is the belief that all three parts must thrive equally. So that's quite interesting. I wonder if that is, true. I wonder if employees feel like that is true. I'm not saying that they don't. I just think it's quite kind of interesting that they place it as being equal. So who are mission statements aimed at? Because it's a relatively recent thing that companies make mission statements, and I would say that they're aimed at a whole range of stakeholders. So if you're doing business with another business, and you're the supplier to that business, you might be looking at their mission statement to think, is this a reliable business? Are they going to pay us? Banks might be interested in the mission statement to get an idea of what the business actually does and what they stand for. Customers might be interested, shareholders, potential shareholders, employees as well, thinking about joining the organisation. So I think all stakeholders would be interested, but I like drinking Diet Coke. I've never read Coca-Cola's mission statement. They might be interested in it, but whether they are actually going to read it and take notice of it, or it's going to influence their decisions, is another thing. Where they found company reports, but also on their websites these days, maybe even printed on the wall in their lobby or something. They usually, I think the BBC has their mission statement to educate, inform and entertain, I think it is. They have that inscribed above the entrance to, I think it's BBC Radio building. This is a question from a while ago from W.H. Smith. Assess the importance to W.H. Smith PLC of its mission statement. So you have to know some theory about whether they're useful or not useful. I would say yes, they are useful in communicating to people, but it depends upon whether the stakeholders are actually going to read it and take notice, and it's going to influence their decision. And just because you say that you're a friendly business that's committed to fair trading doesn't mean you actually are. You know, lots of businesses say certain things about themselves, but their actions don't mirror those sentiments. So you know, there might be a slight disconnect between what they say they are and what they actually do. But I think overall they're quite useful. But when you're answering a question like that, what you're going to want to do is actually look for their mission statement. And this is the key with all Unit 3 questions, to be honest. If it talks about the strategy or the risks or the mission statement, look back through the case study, find the mission statement. So here, I've just copied in the MART scheme, and in the mission statement, they talked about wanting to be outward facing. So then you need to explain why that's important. They talk about wanting to be customer focused. So then you need to explain why that's important. To be store responsive. Then you talk about why that's important. And then we have, on the other hand, it could be argued that the mission statement's too general, of limited use, and that, you know, it's important, but if people don't buy into it and if people don't believe in it, then it's not really representative of the business. So to get, you know, you're aiming for level 3, you're aiming for full marks, detailed and well balanced analysis and evaluation of whether it's important or not. And back to this Adidas one, you could, you know, being customer focused, we've already talked about, you know, pleasing the customer, satisfying the customer, getting the customer willing to pay, because Adidas shoes aren't the cheapest on the market. They are branded, and getting a consumer to pay for the pleasure of having that branded clothing and to make repeat purchases. And then you could talk about why innovation is important, so they're staying ahead of the competition, you know, on and on and on. That's what you do, say if the case study was based on Adidas. So onwards now, onto aims. So aims is your just long-term goal. And from your aim, you get, here we have corporate aims. From your aims, you get objectives. So objectives are usually much more quantifiable, and they should be SMART. I'm sure you've seen this before. Specific, measurable, agreed, realistic, and time specific. Sometimes some people change some of these terms, so I think it's realistic. Not realistic is in there. Achievable, sometimes people put for the A, but I always think achievable and realistic are the same kind of thing. So agreed, you know, gets through that message that you have to have sat down with somebody and say, you know, by the way, this is the objective, this is what we're trying to achieve here. But corporate aim is much more qualitative. So have I got some examples? Oh yes, some lovely examples here. You might have some SMART objectives for yourself. An aim would be to achieve the best possible A-level results that you can, and then these are the objectives. So to achieve that, you need to increase time spent doing homework by 10% over the next 2 years. So it's very specific, it's time bound. I'd say that's realistic for students to do, and if it's with yourself, it would be agreed, and it's obviously measurable as well. You can see if you've achieved that or not. For a business, let's have a look. Have I got any ones? Oh, I don't know if I've got any ones, but for a business, say an aim could be to maintain or increase profitability, whereas your objective would be to increase profitability by 5% over the next, I'm just reading from this, profitability by 25% over the next 12 months. Whereas, you know, a bad objective would be, you know, just to do better, and it's not SMART, it's not specific, it's not measurable. Remember, I'm not going to go through them all because this is really from Unit 1, but the A2s are synoptic, so that means they can ask you questions from lots of different parts of the course and they're expecting you to integrate your knowledge. Remember the difference between for-profit aims, not-for-profit aims, public sector aims as well. They're not always the same, so it does depend a little bit on the nature of the business that you're looking at. So just generally, why do we set objectives? We need to give direction to businesses. Businesses need to have a purpose, and they can help them to, well, you know, if you need to set objectives, you first of all have to have some form of kind of strategic thinking. You first of all have to think, well, what do we want to achieve? How are we going to achieve it? And your objectives are the sort of mini goals that you need to achieve the overarching goal. And then once you've, you know, the time period has passed, you can look back, because they are smart, they're measurable. You can look back and see if those goals have actually been met as well. So it's a way of measuring your performance. However, sometimes objectives from different stakeholders and different objectives within the business can conflict. So growth versus profit. Growth can be a very expensive process, as I'm sure you're aware from Unit 1, and we're going to look in growth in more detail as well for this unit. But that might, in the short run, reduce your profit, but in the long run, it should be able to increase sales in the future. So you sometimes get these conflicts with the objectives. They might not always sit comfortably together, and objectives for different stakeholders will conflict. So I won't go through all of these, but these are some of the objectives that different stakeholders might have. But employees want to have a secure job, and they want their, you know, to be paid fairly, and they want good working conditions, and they want maybe bonuses or pay rises, whereas that would have an impact on costs, and so that might conflict with shareholders' short-term goals, at least. I mean, I'm sure shareholders want to keep hold of really good employees, but in the short term, that could really add to their costs. So you do have these conflicts between different stakeholders as well. A really interesting question, which we'll look at in more detail when we look at the ethical part of the course, as part of the PESTLE analysis, is sometimes you get a question that says, do the ethical goals of the company conflict with the overall purpose or the overall aim of the business to make profit? You know, there's sometimes a conflict between certain objectives. So if we go back to right at the beginning, so the economic mission here of Ben & Jerry's is to sustainable financial basis of profitable growth, increasing value for our shareholders, expanding opportunities for development and career growth for employees. Does that conflict with business practices that respect the earth and the environment? Now, if you're using if you're recycling a lot of the time, well, you know, sometimes recycling can actually reduce your costs, but if you're using more sustainable methods of production, that might actually increase your costs. That might conflict with profit because it is increasing your costs. But if you have a more kind of long-term view of this, by being more environmentally friendly, you might be able to promote yourself as being more environmentally friendly and tap into a growing market of consumers who want businesses that they buy from to be more environmentally friendly. So there's always a few different sides to these things, but sometimes even in a mission statement, some of these goals conflict. If we go back to Adidas, do some of these goals conflict? Environmentally responsible, socially responsible. Does that conflict with financially rewarding shareholders? I mean, I don't know how good or bad Adidas are as employers, but you know, I mean, I'm not accusing Adidas of doing this, but there are other companies that have been caught up in sweatshop scandals. Obviously, the disaster in Bangladesh with the factory, the closed manufacturing factory, and I think Primark were caught up in that. And you know, saying that they're ethical and that ethical goal really didn't seem to be top of their priority list, as they were, you know, getting supplies from a factory that wasn't safe for their employees. And it sort of, I suppose they chose that because they offered a competitive price And so, you know, there, in that instance, ethics conflicted with profit. But there's always a few different sides to things as well. So have a look at that.